Treaties in July 1900, and three brothers who became chief one after the other, Emile, Joseph, and Baptiste Dragus. In honor of their name, the elders named this part of the country after them, Chief Dragus. But we're really part of the Acacia territory as well. Thank you. Right, Tammy?
Keep going.
Morning. I'll start over again. We'll do an open prayer. Stand up, please. Yeah, thank you for coming. This beautiful day here. Many of you have traveled quite a ways to get to this area, and it's probably a beautiful journey for you. Time to visit here as friends, family, shopping, but above all, want you to have a good time here and a safe visit here, and until you get back to your family. So we'll ask them. We'll do the Lord's Prayer. I'll do the Lord's Prayer. You follow me. Thank you. I believe.
So I guess that mic doesn't work.
Yeah. Give me Robert.
You can have this one. Just put that anywhere on there. This guy do
German is one pair.
Yeah.
So, did you taste it?
Yeah. Dennis
It's like my skidoo. I've got lots of wires on. How you put this?
How's it working?
No.
Coming through?
Okay, keep going.
Yeah. Coming through?
Not
About, it's better? Any better? All right. We'll use that one.
Sorry about that. Now I've got to find it. Okay.
There you go. Yeah. We know this one works. There we go. Thanks. Sorry about that.
Yeah, good morning. As I said, welcome everybody to Yellowknife. Lots of things to do, and this workshop we're doing here. My friend Bob called me yesterday. I was happy to come to talk about the local economy. As you know, there's a lot happening all over this part of the north, but also in our communities, there are some things that are changing too. And hopefully that we'll learn a lot, and our community will go back to base community. I don't know what happened to Bob, but it wasn't me.
Not this time.
Anyways, I'll hand it over to Bob here. You can carry on. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Fred. And good morning, everybody. So, good morning, everybody. Hear me? Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, can you hear me back room? Good morning once again, and Musty Fred, that was great. It's always good to recognize traditional land that we're on here today and wherever we are. And you know, really, as we think about this stuff, so many of our indigenous cultures in the Northwest Territories, and really many places in the world, are so focused on economies, be they domestic or commercial or market or whatever, that are focused on maintaining the life systems that support us. And that's got to be our bottom line, as I think we're learning, as our indigenous people already know so well. So I really appreciate the representatives from various parts of the NWT that are here today. And when I think about it, you know, we all come from the land, and we all will return to the land. And at some point in our history, we've all come from societies that recognize that need. So when we talk about localizing our economies, we're really talking about localizing our economies. We've been there before, and we have an innate knowledge that we need to be there. So this is very exciting, and it's just great to see people here. We had a very nice session last night. Thank you, Dennis, for calling that meeting. I want to start by saying thank you to all who have helped to make this forum happen, our sponsors, and there are many of them. Our planner, Lois Little, our organizer, Ecology North, especially Craig Scott and Jeremy Platt here, and you'll see many Ecology North people in and about the room helping make sure things go smoothly. My colleague and MP for the Western Arctic, Dennis Devington, of course, and our constituency assistants, Ben Nend and Bob Wilson, who are here today, and especially to the speakers and panelists who have given so freely of their time. So we'll be hearing from these amazing people in the next couple of days, and they have donated their time. There's been no compensation here, so really much appreciated. Communities around the world, in fact, used to be largely self-sufficient. There was a focus amongst residents to share, cooperate, and support life, with the realization that the benefits they achieved were real. Such a way of being tended to build locally appropriate skills and very useful traditional knowledge and know-how, while ensuring a role for everybody in the community. People were vested in contributing and keeping the family and community strong. Northern communities were the same. These were communities with localized economies, and that's what we're talking about re-achieving here today. With the development of larger government roles, communities began to receive better support in healthcare and income support for those with disabilities or for seniors in need. And these supports were funded from taxes, which government collected from the real productive work that was happening across the country. With the advent of the rapidly growing national and international scale limited liability corporations and their powerful advocacy for greater freedom, less regulation, and reduced taxes, power has been pulled out of communities, often now residing in international free trade agreements that are regulated by corporate tribunals rather than judicial oversight. Essentially, this was a new and escalating focus on an economy for the accumulation of money rather than an economy that serves people, life, and systems that sustain us. Our now globalized economy means that we meet few of our basic needs with local and renewable resources. Just looking around the room and thinking about what we had for breakfast, maybe these things come home. And we have fewer tax dollars with which to support such activity. We heard last night about the subsidies for oil and gas development and what we could be doing with those to support the sorts of things we're talking about today. In fact, when our government supports our communities by sending money for energy or food or housing, before it even reaches the community, that money describes an 180-degree arc and heads south of the border, where it's used to purchase goods and services and expensive transportation of the same products back into our communities. Now, what does this really mean, though? When looked at closely, it means the jobs and the benefits of producing those things go to the people who live afar. It means the profits from business transactions go to company shareholders who reside outside of the NWT, possibly even in another country. It means the wasteful and climate-damaging combustion of fossil fuels to ship things from great distances before they can arrive in our community. And finally, it means the products we do finally receive are very expensive, but we have a few local jobs, which allows us to afford these goods. There's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. Unfortunately, just looking around the room, there are many of us who agree, and many of us who are doing something about it. Really, we need to relocalize our community economies, start producing our basic needs of energy, shelter, art and entertainment, clothing, food, which we'll hear about a lot this morning, largely from local and renewable sources, though not to the exclusion of non-renewable, and certainly local knowledge. We understand that providing such a foundation to our community economy will provide us the economic security on which to soberly consider non-renewable resource development proposals and other economic development opportunities that may be available and viable. We also know from experience that by taking the route of localizing our economies, we are developing lasting and meaningful jobs in our communities. Locally appropriate skills, as mentioned, the land knowledge needed to assure recovery and conservation of depleted environments, the reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, and the strengthening of our community's social fabric in ways that will benefit all alike. It's time to do this work with awareness, cooperation, joy, and with recognition of our roles and responsibilities in the unfolding complexity and beauty of the natural world which supports us. With the speakers, panelists, and attendees we have with us at this forum, and those people who may be tuning in through the internet from across the NWT, let's all be prepared to be inspired. And thank you for listening to me. I can't wait to hear the real gist of the talk today. Masi.
Good morning. My name's Dennis Bevington. I've been a member of Parliament here in the Northwest Territories for the past getting on 10 years, and I'm very pleased to be here today. I'm also very pleased that over the course of the last year, working with your MLA, Bob Bromley, we've come to this conclusion about promoting this type of activity. And that process that we went through was very, very good. For me, it started 2 years ago when I did a cost of living study, actually through Lois Little's consulting firm. We did a look at the cost of living and the basic income distribution in northern communities, and we saw after 10 years of record GDP growth in the Northwest Territories that there was a greater and greater income inequality, even in communities that were very close to the center of the industrial activity, even in communities where there were IBAs for the First Nations that worked there. So what we saw was this income inequality that was increasing, and we saw that the actual number of communities, the rate of poverty went up, and that was based on very we did take inflation into account, and if we did that, the situation would become more dire. We've seen that the Auditor General came out with a report on Nutrition North, but he said things in there that were very interesting, that you need to use a 5% rate of inflation in the Northwest Territories for food products. It's much higher than the Canadian average. We know that energy costs in Canada as a whole, if you're on a natural gas pipeline, you're paying basically the same price for natural gas as you were a decade ago. But in the Northwest Territories, where we rely on fuel oil, the rate of inflation was almost 400%. It's gone down a little bit with this drop in the oil price, but it's still between 300% and 400% inflation in our basic energy commodity over this decade as well. So we've seen cost of living going up, we've seen income inequality, we've seen the poverty is increasing in many of our communities. So this was not a very good situation. It's a situation that has to change. So our reliance on non-renewable resource extraction, important that it is, and nobody's saying that this is not important for our economy, important that it is, it was not producing the results that we require to build a decent economy here. We weren't, those people that were working in the mines, they weren't spending the money in the communities. Most of the money that they spend in the communities would be on imported goods, on imported energy, on imported food, on imported entertainment, on imported products. So they're, you know, in southern conditions, when you have a person employed in a resource economy, you might see, you know, that the multiplier effect occur where one job creates another 4 or 5 jobs. Wasn't happening to us. It's not happening to us. So we have a problem in our economy. And so out of that, Bob and I spent time talking about this, and we said, well, let's do a survey of stakeholders and see what they want to see for our local economy. What kind of answers that people are working on right now, that people are doing, that we can support and find ways to support, so that we can build an economy that actually includes everyone and that can change these statistics that are very bad, and they're very much getting worse. So that was the impetus behind it. We did the survey. We were very pleased with the kind of response that we got. We used SurveyMonkey, which is a tool that is available to anyone. It's part of that modern technology that allows us to accumulate information wherever you live. It's part of something that we can be very useful to northern people. It's just like Facebook. Why is Facebook so important to northerners? Because we like to communicate with each other. We like to share. We have family connections throughout the north. I always call the Northwest Territories the world's largest small town, because it's that way. We want to call each other by our first names. We want to have relationships that stretch from Inuvik down to Fort Smith up to Sax Harbor. We want to be able to be part of that larger community, and so that's an exciting thing that we have in the Northwest Territories. So bringing us together here today, the work that Ecology North is doing to set up this conference, but also to set up a website that can be in place for years to come, but which will encourage more of this communication about what we're doing and what's successful and how to be successful in local economies is so important. So that's the purpose of this. You know, Ecology North has been a wonderful organization here, and I want to just say that, you know, we were also terribly saddened by the loss of Doug Ritchie, a friend to everybody in the north and a friend to the earth. And so to see, so I think in some ways I felt that this is you know, part of his work, and I'm really pleased that this is going ahead on that basis, because it reflects the spirit that he had, and the spirit that really represents all of us. So we're gathered here today. We're going to talk about localizing the economy. We're going to talk about the things that we're doing and how we can encourage more of this to happen, how we can spread the knowledge, how we can encourage government to make different investments so that we can see that the local economies can flourish. We can understand how the economics work. You're going to hear a lot about energy and economics. You're going to hear some about food and economics too. How do you actually, you know, make a living doing the things that are possible in the north? How can you become you know, part of this local economy? Is it as a part-time? Is it full-time? Whatever it is, what you do is going to be good for the people of the North, for yourself and for your families. And families are incredibly important. And so I'm really glad we're all here today. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So my name is Craig Scott. I'm with LG North. So we had the pleasure of being asked to organize this event. It started from an initiative that Doug and Dennis did, as they mentioned, and we got brought in to try to make this happen. And we're very happy that we're hoping to continue this gathering into the next couple of years and make this an annual event. So one of the things we want to think about is we've got a couple teams today and tomorrow, but you might want to think about what we are not talking about and what we might want to discuss next year as well. But I guess I'm going to talk a bit more about some of the things we have to do today and a bit of the housekeeping things. So a few things. The washrooms are in the back corner here. We're going to have food throughout the next 2 days. We'll have like muffins and or a snack in the afternoon, and we'll also have lunches. So yeah, there's coffee and tea. And if you have any questions about anything, you can ask myself or Kat up at the front here, or one of these guys over here. So yeah, I'd like to introduce Jeremy, who's being a force of organizing this event. Paige Saunders, who created the website that we're going to be using to bring in people from across the territories, and Jessica, who helped with that. I just wanted to mention the website that we're going to be using. This is kind of a new thing. It was developed from scratch, and our goal, instead of bringing people to this room, yeah, thank you. Instead of bringing people to this room from all over the NWT, we decided to bring the room to them. So we're trying to develop a new kind of platform that hopefully will be used in other events as well. But it's interactive. People can follow a streamed event here. They're gonna see us talking, and they're gonna be able to follow along from wherever they are. We've talked with communities and tried to get people to post and have little nodes in different places. So yeah, welcome to anyone who's out there right now, and we've also invited school groups, and hopefully some schools will join in and events during the week. So yeah, welcome if anyone's online there. The way this is going to work is people can make comments. So as we go through the day, this will be on the screen over here. I'm not sure which one, but as we talk, people can make a comment and say, hey, I like what Bob just said, or what about this, or you guys are forgetting about this, and we're going to try to bring those in as we go along. So after as the day goes on, we're going to have I think 4 panel sessions today. Going to be people up here kind of discussing some experts, and then we're going to have about a half-hour question and answer period, and that's where we'd like you all to think about some questions and to try to think about what you really want to see or hear. We're also going to try to bring in people from the communities and get their questions. So if anyone out there has any questions, you can write them on your screen, and we'll try to bring them up in the room here. As part of that, it would be nice if those people at the back wanted to come forward a little bit. Maybe not right now, but when we get a little break, it would be better if people were kind of closer, so we can have a bit more of a back and forth discussion.
It's not church.
So yeah, I thank Bob and Doug for getting this started, but I also like to thank our sponsors. We have a number of them. Ties Canada, Environment and Natural Resources were our 2 biggest sponsors, but also ITI, Public Works and Services, Ducks Unlimited, the City of Yellowknife, and Arctic Green Energy also sponsors this event, so thanks to all of them. A few other things, if you don't have a name tag yet or haven't signed the sign-in form at the front, if you could go up and do that with Kat. And The other thing we've got is we've got a bunch of motions, and some people have already put in motions, and these are kind of questions that you think should be asked. And so on their website, we're going to ask people who are out there to kind of vote on these motions and put comments whether they think it's a good idea. So kind of things like Bob just mentioned, like should the mines have to hire people only from NWT or not fly them down south or something like that. I've got some forms here, so people can actually fill out the forms. I'm going to put them by that computer over there. You can also write them straight into that tablet. And Jessica will be over there to help you out if you have any questions. And so it's just, if you have a good question, you can just kind of write it down. It's going to go on our website, and it will be asked through the day to people who are out there. And through that question, those questions will get some good feedback that will hopefully, take forward and try to help us with, all the things that come out of this. Yeah, so I think that's about it. The only other thing I wanted to say is, like this question of what is localizing the economy. And to me, I think it is, it might be different things to other people, but it's trying to keep money in the communities and in NWT. And all that money that basically goes out to oil and gas companies and the food distributors and things like that who are bringing food into the territories. Like, there's no reason why we can't replace those dollars that we spend on southern imports with stuff that we produce here. So that's the whole idea of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to find innovative ways to do that. So if you have ideas, it's not just you're not just here to learn, but you're also here to teach everybody else. So make sure you get you talk. And anyway, I think that's about it for me. So thanks.
Thanks, Greg. We'll be calling you back up. Okay. So he's technology here, trying to move things around. Bob, you okay there? Did carry you off the stage? So we're going to move ahead here with the first part of our agenda. We are so pleased to have Jackie Milne, who is fresh off the plane from Zimbabwe. Hay River, around to Zimbabwe, back to Yellowknife. Jackie, if you don't know Jackie is the president of the Northern Farm Training Institute, NIFTY. And she is revolutionizing the agricultural sector in the Northwest Territories. And we are so blessed to have a woman with such passion, such knowledge, and such commitment that I was hearing Junior McNeely from Fort Good Hope on the radio the other day talking about his chicken farm, and and he is a trainee of Jackie's, and so Jackie is a real change maker, and so she's going to set us up for the two panels on food this morning. And so Jackie's got a short presentation to share, and then we'll be hearing from 4 panel members, and then we'll have a Q&A, including the folks that are participating online, and then we'll have a second panel on food. So the first panel on food is food production. The second panel is on storage and harvesting issues that Doug Whiteman raised last night. So it's going to be a great beginning. So Jackie, thank you for getting back from Zimbabwe to join us. Welcome, Jackie.
This is not my normal heritage. At the end, everybody wanted to touch my hair, so they put braids in, and I've been working to get them out. So just so you know, it touched me deeply. There's a lot of stories I'd like to tell, but I want to kind of try to stay focused. I might go over time, but I don't normally go. The part I thought I'd touch on first is the title of what they named my piece, The Heart of, food in the local economy. And I thought that really is an important word, because the heart is a biological part of ourself, right? And we are a very unique animal on this planet because of our intelligence and our tool-making abilities have given us the ability to form a much larger relationship than other animals with the non-living elements of our planet. This room, we are able to manipulate rocks and minerals and the water and the air. And our focus has moved, and our emphasis right now, there's a lot of our efforts go towards relationship with geology. And as we've moved in that direction, our relationship with biology has been reducing. And this is the balance I think all of us are feeling. We've moved a little too far in the relationship with the non-living part. And when I was flying in, we got to take a route that I have never seen before because of the wind. We flew in over Pine Point. And looking down, I was looking at all that infrastructure that you can still see from the air, all the old roads and everything. But clearly that community was not a sustainable community because it was singularly based on extracting. So it was a relationship based on geology. And so we don't want that. We want our investment in the non-living part, we want it to be able to enhance our relationship with biology. And of course, the number one way of doing that is with food. And really, everything we need to live can be grown. Everything. Every single thing. And every place is different. And so to enter back into that relationship is to tap into our creativity, our intelligence, our imagination, and our love for life. Because that is what it's about. And when I really think about it, what this is about is the restoration of our food independence. Because the further we go away from local food independence, the more vulnerable we are, the less sustainable we are, and the less connected to place. And so if we really want to be here permanently, that this is something that we need to restore. We need to restore. So this is a slideshow that we actually, in part of our training I was doing there, it was all about sort of basically how to successfully manage our facility to be truly sustainable, long-term, integrated. And I really like this picture because it shows our food system is probably going to be based on a lot of diverse elements. Because the harsher the environment, the more diverse, and we can't be, we're not going to be fed from a monoculture system. And this is a quote from Alan Savory, the founder of the Institute. Ultimately, the only wealth that can sustain any community, economy, or nation is derived from the photosynthetic process, green plants growing on regenerating soil. So, if we build a food system that's not linked to the regenerative natural cycle of the planet, we will not have a sustainable society. We have to be a functioning part. So with the Northern Farm Training Institute, NIFTY, and our unique situation in the north, really we need to look at doing this together. And so together we can harvest all we need. We can take knowledge and understanding of food systems from all over the world, our own local knowledge, and we can create a system that will integrate these all together and feed us. And so we can tap into, simple technologies. That's Junior McNeely's greenhouse up in Fort Good Hope. And wild harvest is an important part of how we're going to feed ourselves. Very low-tech, non-energy dependent ways of preserving our food. Drying food is ancient, and then our domestic systems that we can bring in. And together, there's strength in that diversity. And every place in the north is going to probably have a different focus depending on the environment where they are. We know the problem. That's a real picture from here. Yet last year, because of forest fires, that's in your grocery store. Okay? And we have a challenge. We do have long winters. We do have an extreme climate. Where I was in Africa, uniquely, very similar situation. They have a very dry season, which is like our winter, when it's very hard to grow food. They have challenges to preserve food, very similar to us. Then we have the vulnerability of when we are dependent on the winter roads, the things that can go wrong, the quality of food and the cost of food, and imported in a can, and also flying, right? These are, not really long-term solutions. The more dependent we are on that, the more vulnerable we are. And so to focus on the food system for in my opinion, is to focus on our core staple needs, core key nutrient foods, dense foods that we can store and preserve, and we can import the treats, we can import the spice, we can import the coffee, those things, because our life doesn't depend on it. We can import those elements, but the core foods, really, we need to recreate that. So the solution is regenerative. Because we talk about sustainable, but sustainable is a word that's more connected to the infrastructure. We want to be able to build an energy system that is, we're going to be able to perpetuate. But when it comes to food systems, they need to be beyond sustainable. We need to interact with ecology in a way that we support it and nurture it and support the regenerative function of the environment, okay? Diverse local food systems, this is what we need to aspire to. Without agriculture, it's not possible to have a city, a stock market, banks, university, church, army. Agriculture is the foundation of civilization and any stable economy. So even a small community, even if the empires of the world were to fail, if we were to have little communities here that would endure, they would have to have a fully functioning food system. And it's core. Can we do it? Yes, we can. This is the Hay River Farmers Market. Lots of food. Those are some of my chickens coming out from winter. That's a pile of compost coming out of my barn. Here's a backyard garden in Hay River. Little greenhouse. You have gardens like that here. This is our Hay River CSA. This is a box that's put in from 4 different farmers. And I just want to quickly touch on economy. That box goes for $40 a week. And without even putting an ad in the newspaper, last year we had 52 customers. Who can do math? That's $2,000 a week, and they come and pick it up. We don't even have to deliver it. Okay, so that is very doable, very quickly at retail prices, and it's very, we give them a really nice variety. This is the one time I was able to make it to the Yellowknife Farmers Market, which I think is a marvelous venue that is very important as more food growers come from the other regions to have a core stable market here, so people can bring food here and make it so that they can be profitable, is very important. And the outcomes, of course, is we want to make sure we maintain our healthy land and functioning ecosystems. And we want to have an abundance of accessible foods, but the food we eat might change. How we eat and what our menu is going to look like is going to be more connected to the regional foods we can produce. And that's where the creative cooks come in. All right? And we want what? We want quality local jobs. Now, quickly touching on that, I've been doing a lot of research across Canada, BC, the prairies, and back east. There are young farming families, couples, that are farming on 3 acres down to 1 acre, are direct marketing their products, and they are grossing from 100,000 to 140,000 a year. And they don't work in the wintertime. So they get to live more seasonally, and the price of food down there is less. And I've compared our prices, okay? It would be closer to $200,000 for a young farming family to get started. That's the income they could generate, okay? That's doable. That's a pretty good quality job. You get to be with your family, you get to work outside, you get to have access to the fresh food, and you get to have a rest in the wintertime. I mean, there's a lot of extra benefits to it, okay? It takes time though. I mean, it might take you 5 years to get good at it. So, you know, is it worth us pursuing? Right now, that 150 million is actually not quite high. It's actually closer to probably $170 million a year is spent on food by the northern people. And that's basically a type of extraction right now because it's food, it's extracting our money, okay? Huge, huge market for us to very easily tap into, you know, very easily to tap into. So that, you know, and of course we want to make sure, we want to build it right. That's why I went to Zimbabwe, because we do not have a dysfunctional agricultural system that we need to replace, like what's happening down south. Their soils are eroded or polluted with chemicals, and people are trying to transform their systems. We have a moment where we can say, wait, we want to implement genuinely integrated ecosystem functioning domestic arrangements that will complement and blend in, okay? And of course, our goal, we figure if we could train 4,000 people throughout the Northwest Territories, we could feed ourselves. Because one person without machines can feed 10 people for a year. Okay, so that is an attainable goal of 4,000. Okay, and then one of the opportunities we have is because of our uniqueness of our situation, we were accepted into the Savory Global Network. And basically, we want to become Canadian Centre of Excellence for Holistic Management Training. And we will become accredited, and we will be the first facility in Canada that will have the exclusive privilege of delivering their curriculum. And primarily their work is helping people to restore ecosystems, because 2/3 of the world's surface has been degraded, mostly accidentally, started thousands of years ago, by one form of agriculture or another. And so a lot of land, people are trying to feed themselves on degraded lands, and their systems actually help people regenerate the degraded lands and still feed themselves. So our strategy is, of course, to operate this center, and we're trying to, you know, invest our money really wisely. So we're going to use yurts, and this is an example of, you know, the type of training we have. We want to foster sustainable farming and manage it holistically. And to say holistic is that when they say holistic, is we learn to include everything, and that is ourself. We have to include ourself back into the equation. How many people like working at a job that makes them crazy and they hate it? Right? That's not very sustainable, and we're doing it to ourselves, right? So the quality of life is a big part of what we have to do. So we have to do this. And does she look happy? She looks happy, and that's McNeely's. That was the summer. They double dug that. They didn't have a rototiller, and that was their first summer garden from coming. And so this is the international network we've been connected with, and that little star is Hay River. And so we are going to be able to accept, and basically the other part of it is we'll be able to serve not just the Northwest Territories, but the circumpolar regions of the north. That is, I think, in Sweden. Yes, yeah, it's there. Very similar terrain, vegetation, everything. That was really, really interesting. Okay, and so the structure basically is, we want to have our courses, especially workshops, holistic management training. This is a picture of the site, a beautiful land. I really feel privileged that we're going to be able to steward this property and demonstrate a way of building something really fresh. We have all of our intellect, right? We've got all of this, we can do it. And now we have an opportunity to do it and demonstrate we can do it. And then that's some of our income. This is our team. This is our board and some of our core staff people. We've got about 10 people working with us now. It's a unique program, very hands-on, outside, we do work. They're actually going to come next week and we're going to be building gardens at the site. And the students will actually get to participate in physically creating this farm campus. And it is going to be an authentic farm that is going to produce food, because it's addressing multiple issues. We need food, okay? We need a unique, genuine place for people to learn the business component. That's a very important part. So the students will come and physically help this facility produce food. Our goal is to produce $1 million retail of food once the system's fully set up, because that's what's needed to feed 200 people. And our goal is to set the campus up to feed 200 people, because our most vulnerable communities are 200 people or less. What does that look like to feed 200 people? How much food is that? How many greenhouses do we need? How big does the garden space need to be? How much food storage capacity do we need? How do we preserve the food? How much of that is complemented or supplemented by wild foods? We need to quantify that. So we want to be able to have people come there, look at it, document it, and say, okay, well, we plan this out with this much investment. We can implement this stage, that stage, northern orchards. This is that was an excellent document from the UN. That document, everyone read it. Read it. They are telling governments that the present food paradigm is not what's going to feed the future. We need to transition to exactly what we're talking about here, which is really great. Those are all the communities so far that our graduates have come from. Out of our 2 years, 10 of our students have already gone on to start their own food business. So that's really good statistics. This is another document that our program was mentioned in our first pilot year as one of the solutions for transforming our food systems. And then this was just some stuff we're doing, like how we've been growing and our buildings we're building, and that's the kind of barn we're going to have. And basically long term is we want this, we're basically a nonprofit organization, but we're following a model of what's called a social enterprise. So we want to have the capacity to generate our own income. So if the economy takes a downturn, this is too important to be vulnerable. So it needs to be sustainable, just like we're talking about sustainable communities. And this is a map scenario of the infrastructure of what we want to build. So we need to do some creative work with the water so we can harness the water and have a gravity-fed system, because where those greenhouses are, that's the lower land, and it's about 100 feet or so of a bank. And we want to also demonstrate, marginal land development. So where the number 1 and 2 is, it's kind of flooded, it's very boreal, kind of swampy, which is a lot of the kind of land we have. How do we work with that land? How do we steward that land to help the nutrient cycle increase so that it can support more life? Human beings have the ability to nurture nature and increase the carrying capacity of the environment around us. Come join us on this journey. And so that's our project, and that's what we're working on, and that's our part we're trying to do to contribute to this movement. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks so much, Jackie. And we'll have a chance to ask questions after we hear from the panel that is going to be talking about food production. And you'll have an opportunity to ask questions to Jackie and to Fred Sangris, would you come up, and Doug Whiteman, and France Benoit, and I don't know whether it's Bobby Draghis here? Didn't see him this morning. Anyways, I would invite the panelists to come up, and Fred and France and Doug are going to tell us a bit more about food production, and we'll have some questions. So these three people are practicing what Jackie was just telling us about. Fred Sangri, as you may know, is a long-term harvester and champion of renewable resources. And when Jackie talks about land stewardship, Fred is all about land stewardship and all about resource management. Some of you may have heard from Doug Whiteman, who comes from Norman Wells, and Doug is got a reputation about growing potatoes and farming in Norman Wells, and he's going to share some of his experiences. And France Benoit, who is the president of the Yellowknife Farmers Market, is a farmer outside of town here. And she is an advocate and a practitioner of sustainable food production. So we're going to learn lots from these three individuals. They're going to spend 10 or so minutes explaining their experiences, and then we're going to have some questions. So Fred, could you start us off?
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Fred Sangris, I live in here. I was born here and raised here, and majority of my life here in Yellowknife Bay. Beginning of my life, I guess, in the early years, I saw local farmers here in the surrounding area, mostly the mine workers, the families, and there were Italian families here too who did a bit of farming, and there were pigeons and all those things. I did not quite understand why they were growing their own food. Those days they could probably just go to the store. But later on I realized what you buy at the store is you have to work hard for it. Dig further in your pocket to buy it. So that's why the farmers were farming here in the early days. But the First Nation that belonged to the Yellowknife Dene, at one time, my grandfather's time, I would say about 1890, 1900, with a lot of Aboriginal people from Fort Smith, Lake Athabasca, Fort Chipewyan, Fort Resolution, down to Roche River, even down here to Burwash, right across. Burwash used to be original Yellowknife Dene village. When Mr. Burwash, who was exploration, bought the whole village. And before he bought the whole village, the Dene were farming there at one time. They brought some goods in from the Roche River, and the Hudson Bay Company and Northwest Company at those times taught them how to farm and grow a bit of food. About 15 miles out of town at Old Fort Providence that was working Northwest Company in 1770s, they were growing their own food there. According to my grandfather, they would go there and see people pulling all these wonderful food out of the ground, and they can throw it in the fire and salt it and cook it. And today, if you fly over there, after over 100 years, I guess, if you fly over there, I'm sure I can still see the potatoes growing. That whole area is all flat. There's one old log building there, maybe over 100 years old, and I'm sure the potatoes still grow there. And some areas from the early explorers who came down here, part of the, mostly on the northeastern side of the lake here, we have wild food that grows. And if you don't keep your eye on your camping trips when you're camping there, you won't see it. You have to look around. Because my friend Dolphus Kaju and I went moose hunting one time September, and he was talking about having an onion. I can't eat fish without having onions, he said. So I don't have any onions, I don't carry, usually I carry onions. We're sitting there and I said, Fred, what is that round thing there? It's about this size, and that had a long root about this long. I never seen a plant like that before. I said, I'm not sure. It looks like an onion, he said. I said, I don't think so. He went over there and cut it off, cut it in half. I smelled it. It was onion. Unbelievable. And I couldn't believe it, so I went back to Deda and I met an elder who grew up in the same area. She said, yeah, there's onions growing all over the shoreline, all from 60 miles out right to Yellowknife Bay here. And on top of that, we have some wild rices in some areas that was brought in from the south. Only one area east of here, a very shallow lake, and that's the only place that grows. I'm not sure how people used it in the past, but they were harvesting those kind of fruits. But as my grandfathers and my grandparents learned how to become farmers, and they were growing their own food, but along with fish and along with moose meat and so on. My father's generations was kind of lost because the road was built here to Yellowknife. The airplanes were coming here now, and the barges were coming in. All the fresh fruits were coming in. All the goods that my grandfather was trying to grow was coming in now. So my father kind of didn't want to learn about farming. He gave it up and started purchasing from the local Hudson Bay store. As the years went by, I got interested not too long ago because I was learning about, I was watching a television documentary about farmers using pesticide and many other toxins, many other chemicals, unknown chemicals to us. And to get rid of the critters and the bugs and everything else, they use a lot of chemicals. Some which are very harmful for me and my people, because we're not immune to a lot of these things from the south. So a lot of the foods that do come to a store, they all look wonderful, clean and cut and everything, but what's in it? That's what I ask myself, what's in it? So my wife and I, over the years, we got really curious about the processed food and other foods that's coming in. We always read the labels, Texas, California, Yukon, Ontario, we read the labels. We try to understand which part of the province and which part of the country is using a lot of pesticide or using toxin for growing their food. So we try to get a food that is very harmless, and they're using organic, natural, which is what we believe is probably the right thing to do, is using natural foods without using any toxin to grow your food. So today, I can tell you that our community today in Dilo and Deda is very healthy people. Not a lot of illnesses. In the 70s and 80s we had lots of illnesses here, people, because the food that they eat was processed food, and a lot of the food they didn't understand. They just ate it and people got sick from it over the years. As my generations today, we're reading a lot of the labels. We're reading a lot of the products, what comes in, where they come from. And so we try to understand so that we try to not open a can and use the can to make your meals, but rather you do the cutting and you use the healthy food. So that's what's going on in my community. And just recently with Lauren Sorensen, who's from Northern Roots, she's a local farmer here who does training. She's been working with us. I've been trying to farm for about 10 years. I could never grow anything, none. And I decided, well, God's not on my side. Farmers are only for special people. So Lauren Sorensen came in, he said, your garden is not growing, your potatoes are tiny like Margot says. I said, yeah, last year too. There's something wrong. She said, I'll show you, she said. So she got me a small little bottle, a glass, and I threw some dirt in there, and I threw water in there, and I shook it up and I waited. She said, if this thing turns green, your soil is acidic. It's not going to grow anything. Your seeds are dying right away. So I've learned that. So I had dirt that had lots of acid in it. So I threw it all out. got some new material with gravel and sheep manure from Canadian Tire, and I did my best. And I think last year I grew probably one of my finest potatoes. It was really good. My neighbors were coming over. So you're going to grow a big potato, find a secret location. And with this little bit kids around, because kids are the darnest things. Even though they're cute, they can pull your garden up. That's what was happening with us. So, along with harvesting, I come from a nomadic family. Both of my parents are nomadic. They're not educated. They speak their own language. They don't speak English at all. They go on the land, harvest all winter, and they come back and drive all their goods. So it was meat and fish. We really never had any vegetables or anything along with that. Many years. But as a child, I grew up that way. In nomadic times with sled dogs traveling on the lake. The first time I seen something yellow was a banana. And my grandfather always told me, anything green or blue or yellow is not good for you. And now I find out it's the opposite. Anything that is green, blue, or yellow is good for you. So, over the years, we've tried to, my community, as you know, the Yellowknife here, we've been trying to farm here, Yellowknife in our community, but the problem we're running here is the soil. As you know, the Yellowknife had this devastation on Giant Mine, sulfur dioxide, arsenic, and so on. I did a study in 1999 with a scientist, and we did a study, Giant Mine, up to 24 kilometers. Up to about 20 kilometers, the berries I sent to McGill University, I got the results back about 5 months later. The arsenic in the berries can be traced up to 20 kilometers radius of Giant Mine. So I'm trying to farm, my community is trying to farm, but the soil in our backyard is just not healthy, not good at all. So what I told Lawrence Sorensen is that if you can convince Arctic farmers here to dig deeper into the soil and get that green soil, that good soil, and have it tested, maybe that soil can be brought to the community and overlay with other clean soil, and maybe that's how we can start farming. And that's what we did. We never, none of our community members are digging up the backyard for that soil because we still believe the arsenic and the sulfur dioxide is there, which is harmful for us. We could grow a lot of beautiful foods, but it's not going, in the long run, it's not going to help us. But with us here in the city of Yellowknife is soil. If you can get good soil, good dirt, you'll have fine, healthy fruits. And that's what we're looking at. The community garden in Dillon has just started the last few years, but it's been becoming popular among the people that live in there. Dada is asking for their own community garden now. So much that I have to go and hide. You see Margaret. She's taken over now.
This year.
But people that want to grow their own food, because same concern I have. I don't know where the products come from, what's in it, how it was taken care of, and how it got to the market. And when I go to the market, do I have to read all the labels to safeguard my own health? People are learning now. They're learning because they're educated, they're able to learn, they're able to know where the products come from and what products are good for their kids, and that's what they're feeding. Yesterday I watched a documentary on the world of potatoes, I didn't know that the potatoes came from South America. I always thought they came from New York. New York fries. So it did originated from South America and worked its way up. When it landed in America, people bred the potatoes and seeds, so all kinds of potatoes came out. So now I'm trying to wonder which potato is good now, because there's so many of them. And they're all used for different products, right? Some for oil, some for French fries, and some for cooking, you know, you can use all varieties. So that's one thing I finally realized, you know, I can become a potato farmer, but I have to know what I'm growing. What's it for? Is it for the horse or is it for me? So I have to know what I'm growing. Maybe that's the thing among potato farmers, and my friend Doug here, who I've known for over 30 years, grows a lot of potatoes and normal wells, but I don't know much about potatoes. If there's a booklet on different types of potatoes in the world, different types of vegetables in the world, and similar to Gina of TITI, she was showing us the type of mushrooms to pick. But if there was a world of vegetable, a booklet of vegetables, how you can cook this and what you can use it for, where it's grown, you know, a bit of history of where it comes from, that would be good. That would help a lot of Northerners, especially Aboriginal people like myself. I harvest fish, I harvest moose, I harvest beavers, muskrat, mallards, caribou. Even though we're laid off caribou, but there's a quota in place now. We don't eat a lot of caribou meat. We're preserving a lot of the caribou meat, but now we're producing food. We want to make the vegetables and all the good things part of our diet today. It's happening now. The older people, 2 generations from me, the older people have their basic diet for food, which is dry fish and meat, fish and meat. And a little bit of traditional food if they can gather it in the forest. That's part of their diet. But our diet as First Nations, young generations, our diet really changed. We get into more vegetables, more fruit, and kids are getting into those things. So we're on the road for a healthier. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, my community had a really high cases of diabetic. Unbelievable, diabetic. People were having diabetic. So I was a chief at that time, and I asked the schools to look at all their pop machines, everything that they cook at schools that is no good for kids. If we're going to change anybody, we might as well start with the young generations. So that kind of thing happened. The pop cans went out of the schools, all the junk food. I'm sure the pop can guys were mad at me, but it was for the good thing. Today, a lot of our food that processed in the schools, it's education, but it's educating the young generations to get the right food, healthier food, so that they can have a healthier lifestyle. And along with that, you know, the parents are probably hanging on to the old ways of cooking the food in the back door, carrying the fish. There's nothing wrong with that. Those are all good things too. But today we're trying to combination of the two. And because, as we heard it here, the food prices is going up. If you live here in Yellowknife, it's not too bad, but if you live nowhere else, it's a little bit worse. But if you live in Cambridge Bay, where my cousins live, it's even bad. A small bag of potatoes will cost you like $10. Here's probably, salted here is probably only like $2 or less. And farmer's market in Edmonton is probably like $1 for a big bag, you know? And that's what's happening. As you go further north, the cost is getting, and who's gaining all the costs? It's the transport, it's the police, and the people who are running it, bringing it up here, and they're making all the money. But it's not about the money, it's about getting the product, the food, the cheapest, and if you can grow it, bring it to your house. My wife and I grow potatoes, carrots, and sweet peas. Those are the trees we grew last year because we depend. We sure use a lot of potatoes, carrots for our soup, and peas for our soup. But along with that, now we're planning to grow some onions this summer, because fishing season is just around the corner. I'm trying to grow a bigger garden because that way I can give a little bit to my neighbor and the kids that come around. But we are turning around the community. As you know, I seen Doug in the paper many years ago. That was a sign that people are turning around. People are going back to community, you know, gardening. And you only have a short summer, so you have to do really quick. And then there's work into it in September, but it's a lot of work. And if you can get all your family together, you know, it's a healthy way of doing things. I love gardening, but I don't like water. I leave that to my wife. I like this guy instead. Fishing. Thank you very much. I hope you that give you a little bit of we do have a lot of meat and fish on a great lake here. There's no pollution on this lake, and people are going out getting the fish all summer, which is a good thing. There's plenty of food during the winter. But bringing a combination of vegetables and all sorts of things together, really, that's a plus for our community. Hopefully, all the community. Hopefully, there will be more support coming to our community. We can do more community gardening. And I can tell you that there's a lot of interest now this year. Thank you.
Well, my first problem is I've got a sore throat here, but also they've only given us 10 or 15 minutes to speak. Freddie's dad, Morris, told me one time, Doug, if I had your lips behind my boat, I wouldn't be a jet boat anymore. And I'll say if Freddie wanted to go potatoes, he made a bad mistake in the 70s to send me over on Bear Lake on a one-way ticket, never to return, because I would have helped him with those potatoes for sure. But I'll give you a little background on myself, where I was raised in Addington Highlands, north of 1 hour and a half north of Lake Ontario. It's north of Kingston Belleville area. It's a pretty depressed area. Also in the wintertime, there's absolutely no work. People do cut pulp and or to deliver out to the paper mills. And everybody, when I was a young lad, say 8 or 10 years old, and well, born basically up until I was even in my 20s, most of the people in our little village had kitchen gardens. Like they were twice the size of the lots in Norman Wells, and everybody had a house, had a kitchen garden. And I mean everybody. And they all put up reserves. They didn't do much freezing at that time. Everything was done in jars. They made all your own relish, pickles, they canned meat, they canned stews, they canned fish, they canned everything. And I was really lucky to be able to learn some of that from my grandmother, appreciate it and understand just why they were doing that and working with the people. There were also farmers, but they were small farms, not like you see in Alberta. They were 100-acre farms, maybe only 20 acres were under agriculture. Part of it was bush. They run cattle on there, some pigs. Never saw any sheep back that way, but pigs and chickens. The store that we had in the village was a general store. It was basically buy some nails, hammer, cattle feed, pair of jeans if you wanted. If I went there to buy eggs, it was going to be my grandmother's eggs anyhow, so why would I go to the store to buy eggs? You could probably buy rice. I never ate rice in my life until I came up north. Never. We ate some macaroni, but potatoes was the big thing. I guess that's where it got into my blood. So, but we were taught a few things that nowadays don't seem to work out. But basically, that's where I came from. People did have root cellars. I learned from one of my great uncles on how to build proper root cellars. As their old timber root cellars started caving in, I was in the construction business, and they showed me the ins and outs of it and taught me how to do them using. I used concrete and rather than timber, because you never had to worry about a roof rotting and a horse falling through the hill into it, right? So, but I learned those type of things and had it in me, I guess, but I never paid a lot of attention to it after I left the area. As I say, I came into the north here in the 70s and met the Sangers family. And I ended up leaving here, going over to Great Bear Lake, North Shore of Great Bear Lake, and to stay for a few months in the wintertime building a log cabin for an elder right on the tree line there. I am a carpenter by trade. And from there I ended up by medevac into Norman Wells. Like the elder that was sick, when he was returned to the camp, I caught that plane. It was a few months later, back into Norman Wells, and so I ended up that way in Norman Wells, where I met my wife Sandy and raised a family of 6 children. So I know about the cost of living in the north, what it takes to try to survive. At the time, once we started raising our kids, I myself put in a little garden so I'd have some fresh vegetables, potatoes, that type of thing, and I ran that garden for our family over the year of raising the children. Then, at a time in around, I guess about 2005, I had a little sawmill, and I bought a tractor from a guy that was leaving town, and it had some grapple equipment that would allow me to handle logs and get them off the floodwaters that come down the Mackenzie or cut them in the bush and handle it. But along with that tractor came a whole lot of agricultural equipment that, to me, it just came with it. I had no real use for it. I didn't think. And it was an 85 horsepower Massey, a pretty big tractor for there, not 4-wheel drive. But anyhow, there was a friend of mine, Brian Lickosh, and I knew him a little bit at that time, pretty hard-working guy, and he kept saying to me, we should go farming. He was an Alberta farmer. He came from Alberta farm people. And he told me this for about 3 years. And then one day he came to me and said, he didn't say we should go farming, he said, we're going to go farming. He finally had enough of me just saying no about it. So anyhow, he says, I said, I got no money, but I'd semi-retired from the town. I was putting in a little bit of time trying to get all my buildings and things fixed up before I was not physically capable of doing it. My wife was still working for Imperial Oil, waiting for her to retire. And So Brian says, well, I'll pay you the money, I'll buy the supplies, and you do the work. And when I'm not working, I'll come and help you. And he is a hard worker, and he did help a lot, and he had good knowledge too. So regardless of what knowledge we had, we made the same mistake as everybody else did. We plowed up the land, and we dissed it, and we got her all ready to plant. We brought in 3,000 pounds of potato seed, and we actually did about 3 acres in 2 different areas. They were about a half a mile apart, trying some different areas of land. One area, which we turned out the best for us, is along the little grass airstrip at DOT Lake, and it always used to willow in. The willow would grow in, and the planes couldn't land. They were having trouble maintaining it. So I asked them, if I do a 20-meter strip up each side of that airstrip, which is long, I said, if I plow a 20-meter strip and maintain it and keep those willows out, can I use it for gardening as long as I stay off the airstrip and let you know when we're going to be there, planes have to be landing. And they said, sure, that's a good idea. And I said, well, and I'll also mow your airstrip, because along with this tractor I had, where there was a big, I call them bush hogs, they're meant for mowing willows, but you can mow grass quite well with it too. I said, I'll maintain your airstrip, everything for you, if I can keep using this. There was a symbiotic relationship going on between Northward Air and myself that allows me to use that land for no cost, which is fortunate, because there's no agricultural land in the Sawtooth available, and you can only rent industrial land or residential land and pay some exorbitant rates to try to get it. So I was lucky that way. So we brought in that 3,000 pounds of seed. We're all gung-ho, we're ready to plant. We got the whole family out there. We got a whole bunch of friends all involved too, and we put all this seed in the ground, and by darn, they start to grow. We've seen the tops coming up, and we hilled them up like you should, and we took a tanker truck, we watered them, and I even had a helicopter water them there one day for me. So they were just wanted to practice where they could see the spread on the dirt. They couldn't see their bucket spread on the spruce trees. So I said, well, try it out in my garden. So, of course, try to talk me into anything. They did water my garden for me with a helicopter. But anyhow, season went, and it was pretty discouraging, because it grew up, it looked beautiful. It was a real beautiful looking potato garden. Two big areas that we've done. 3 acres. We didn't have a proper digger at that time, so we've been kind of keeping our eye on it, but there seemed to be lots of tops, but not too much underneath, just like Fred was saying. They were very tiny little potatoes, so we dug and dug and dug, and after 300 pounds of little bigger than grapes, we gave up and left the rest of the ground. Well, it wasn't a complete waste, because we had the tops go back in the ground. What potatoes were there were a few nutrients to add to the soil. So we knew we made a mistake. We had one bag of fertilizer that somebody had given us that was hard, just like a rock, and we had busted that all up with sledgehammer and axes and crunched it up as much as we could. And in one little area of the garden, we spread that around. We noticed that where we put that little bit of fertilizer, we had some pretty decent looking potatoes. But the majority of everything we planted, and those, we might have had 100 pounds or something in that small area that were not bad potatoes, maybe 5-6 ounce. But anyhow, it wasn't worth it. It was almost a wasted effort, except for the fact that the ground was now opened up, ready to work. A lot of the roots have been taken out. We still struggle with those for a couple of years, and we had some nutrients going back in the soil. But we said we've got to do something to improve this. So we did what Freddie said. We got those little bags of sheep compost the next year. I think we had 4,000 pounds of that. And we opened up our trenches, and we seeded the same amount, but we pulled back to one area now. We got out of the other area because it had a little too much rock in it, and we got into this one side of the airstrip that looked like it was going to work out pretty good. And we put in our furrow, dropped in our seed, and sprinkled that sheep manure all along the row, and everything was going in by hand. We do the furrows with the tractor, but plant them all by hand, because by the time we store our seed, they got so long of sprouts on them, you can't drop them down through a regular plant. You've got to drop them in by hand, right? So at the end of that season, we actually ended up with a harvest, I'd say, of maybe 5,000 pounds of potatoes, and we put in 3,000 pounds, but at least we got back 5,000 pounds of pretty nice looking potatoes. So we thought we were on the right track. Meanwhile, we go along. Brian has a greenhouse, and he grows everything: watermelons, cucumbers, zucchini. He brought in an apple tree and planted it, and it had about 30 apples of different varieties on it. But the frost killed it that winter, and frost and mice. But he actually had apples in Norman Wells that were the size of apples you'd buy at the supermarket. I couldn't believe it. It even shocked me. And he put in a crabapple tree, and the same thing. It produced he brought them in about 10 or 12 feet high and planted them, and they did really good, but they wouldn't survive the winter. They get killed off, and they come up from the root, but they can't ever get up to start growing to maturity again, so they can produce like that. But he's a crazy guy in some of the things that he'll try to grow, and he manages it because of perseverance. He just doesn't give up, eh? And, but I just focus on those potatoes. I just keep thinking of those potatoes all the time. So, anyhow, second year we did another run of that sheep manure. And we got looking at that sheep manure. It's got a whole lot of gravel stones in it. It's got pieces of sticks in it. It's got all kinds of stuff in there that's not sheep manure. Well, it's called sheep compost, but it's only a small portion of what the gardens I was talking about where I was raised, people would throw fish in there. If we were kids fishing, we had fish left over, or little fish, give them to us. They'll throw them right in the garden and work them in right away. There was no commercial fertilizer. It was all manure. This was the 100% real thing. It wasn't some mixed up with sticks and gravel stone. When I saw that, what you're trying to use, I said, holy smokes, like we're doing something wrong. We're paying to bring gravel and sticks from Alberta. What's the sense of this? So Brian says, well, I'll check this out. And like my wife calls Brian the smart horse, and she calls me the workhorse. I don't know which is the better one. I don't know. Anyhow, he's just going to look for this stuff. So anyhow, he goes online. He gets a line on the Lethbridge beef cattle feedlot, and they sell compost, and it's a pretty rich compost. And it smells just like black dirt, but it doesn't have all these sticks and stones and things in it like we had in these little 20 kg bags or whatever. So we brought in 18 tons of that. Now, there's a problem. You're shipping this stuff from the south. And so about this time I get the idea, well, if we need crap on the ground, like manure, proper manure, we should be having animals here along with it and not be trying to bring this stuff from the south. So we started out with about 100 meat roosters and maybe 25 or 24 little laying hens, leghorns, 5 or 6 turkeys. And that started a little manure crop because I remember my grandmother and grandfather's garden. My grandfather was a professional mining engineer, but he trapped and he run his garden. And my grandmother, French Canadian, run her little egg business to supply the community. So she always said, well, Dougie, she said, you take that chicken manure, you put it over there, and about 2 years later, you put that on your garden. But don't you dare put it on the following year because it's way too hot. So I remember that. You can't use it right away. You've got to set it to the side and throw your other things in it, like waste potatoes, whatever else I can compost. I throw into that pile. So I started the animal composting with that. Now the beef lot compost that we brought up was great stuff, and we used it the same way. We put it right in the trench after the seed potato and then hilled everything. And it grew good, not still top. And what I was looking at was when I was doing a little research on how we could make this work, I noticed in Fort Providence, which you've heard mentioned, that the Roman Catholic Mission's worst year in potato production back in the early 1900s was 10,000 pounds an acre. So I said, if I can just get their worst production, 10,000 pounds an acre, the worst year they ever had, I would sure be feeling pretty good. If I've got 3 acres and I get 10,000 pounds an acre, 30,000 pounds, yahoo boys, we're going to make some money on this. Well, that doesn't look like that either. Anyhow, it was so labor intensive handling this compost. You've got 9 ton having to be put on this field. You're doing it all by hand. Brian's in the tractor, of course, driving the smart horse, right? He's got this hoisted up. My daughter has a little snout on this big white 1-ton tote, and she's filling 5-gallon pails as the tractor moves ahead. And I'm scurrying along, dumping this up the road. So it's very, very labor intensive to handle that much material. We were producing potatoes by now, along with other things, beets, peas, cucumbers, yellow and green beans, half dozen different kinds of lettuces, turnips, anything you want to grow, you can grow there, but you have to do something with that soil. You really got to work with it. At the end of this year, that final year, that beef compost, I said, well, Brian, I got to be the smart horse. I said, I'm going to take some soil samples and send them out and get them tested, which I did. I had opened up another section that stayed wet a little longer during the summer, and I thought because the summers are so dry, if we can get that other side of that airstrip working, maybe things that need more water will do better over there. So we'd open that other side up. I took 2 samples from each area. The side that we had worked for that 3 or 4 years was just borderline in the nitrogen, phosphorus, phosphates, and things you can eat. It wasn't making it, but it was just borderline where you could probably sustain a crop, as it was showing. We were getting some pretty nice potatoes, but not what you really want to see there if you're going to want to get best bang for your buck. So the other side that I had opened up didn't even have a shadow of anything that was needed to grow a potato. And that's what we had tried the first year, and it showed you could grow potato tops, but we're not going to eat potato tops. So it showed that something needed to be added. So I asked, and this is the only thing I wrote down, I asked the Hardy Agri Services to do me up a blend of fertilizer to help me grow some good potatoes up there. And nitrogen 16, phosphorus 7, potash 29, and sulfur 2. That's what he told me. That's the numbers, that's what they call it. 16, 7, 29, 2. That's the number that they use to make it up, right? And these are elements, like I didn't really want to do it, but I talked to a PEI potato farmer, and he says, they're not chemicals. They're naturally occurring elements. They're things you have to have in the ground in order to grow a crop. You've got to have those in there. So this Agri-Services, excuse me, that cold bit make me dry. This Agri-Services, they sent me 3 levels of fertilizing that I could do. Low yield crop, medium yield crop, and the best you can ever get out of it if you lay it right to it. Well, I didn't really want to do that because I was a little bit scared to have the best that you might ever get out of it, so I went with that medium. We applied that fertilizer, which was, I think it was 1,100 pounds an acre, if I'm not mistaken. I do have information that anybody that's interested can ask for. There's a history of everything that we've written down here, and if you can give me your any contact information to Jeremy, we can get some information to you on it. But anyhow, we put that in there, and I went on holidays over at my cabin. When I came back, Brian says, I don't know what you did in that garden, but he says, it's not going to have any potatoes, it's all tops. And I'm talking about 3-4 weeks after I planted. And he says, I had to go hill it. He says, I was running down plants, they'd grown so tall already. And now here's where the first misconcept was from when I was young. Our old timers always told us, you go out there, Doug, you walk that potato patch down, make sure you walk them onions down too. I always told you, I didn't see that with onions, but I learned a little different with potatoes. They say you crush them tops down, well then your potatoes are going to grow more in root, you'd save, but you need those tops in order to get the food from the sun to go down into to get the potatoes. With the onion, it might be a little different. I'm not so convinced on that yet, but you walk them down so they don't grow tops and go to seed. And that's what the old people always told us, our grandmas and parents, they go walk them down. Anyhow, with this, and we got scared because the whole field was looking like this. It was just tall potato plants. They fell over at the end and just covered the ground. And I was afraid there was going to be nothing under it. So we got out there taking a look at it about the first week in August, and holy smokes, there's some pretty nice potatoes starting under there already. And this was really early for normal. By real nice, I mean 4 or 5 ounce potatoes. By the second or third week in August, my daughter and a couple of grandchildren and I think there was a picture of it there where they were working along that one real weedy looking area. We took out 1 row and got 1,200 pounds out of that 1 row. And that was the early harvest, so they were Norlands. And if you're going to plant Norlands, you want to handle them in the warm weather. They won't survive cold weather harvesting unless you're very gentle by hand. And they crack, and even sitting there, they'll just crack open and just bump a little bit. They've got to be warm to harvest. And because that's what I look for over there is a early maturing or mid-season maturing variety. Nothing late. There's no russets that are going to ever be in my garden because it's a waste of time for me. You don't have the season to mature them or to toughen them up. We don't have the season to toughen up on it. Early variety or a mid variety season. By toughening up, I mean mow the tops off and let them sit in the ground a couple weeks so that the skins can toughen up and they won't bruise too much. Right? So I knew that this was happening to me at the time. So anyhow, we did get a 30,000 pound harvest that year using that mix that Agri gave me. The only thing that happened to us a little after that was discouraging is the healthy. The price of potatoes at the store was nearly $5 a pound when we would take in a harvest. We would sell them for $2 a pound. But in the last couple of years, the Healthy Food Initiative has come into place, which puts American potatoes on the shelf in Norman Wells for $1.50 a pound. What are you going to do? Like even people that have gardens around Norman Wells are saying right now, what is the point if I can go to the store and buy them that cheap? And the only thing is it's healthier. You know what's in it. You know what the ground is. Now, I've only got a minute, so we've got to just kind of leave it at that. But here's something. I was in the school, and we were showing them how to plant some things. I was in there for a day, and you ask the kids, well, why would you want to do this? It's quite a bit of work. They said, well, we work with my grandparents, and it's fun, and it's healthy, and my mom has allergies, and the things that she grows, she doesn't have those allergies if she eats her own. And one little tiny girl in grade 6 peeps up and says, sir, it'll reduce our carbon footprint. I just stepped right back and I realized that, but I didn't think about it. So I went right home after that, and I did some Googling, and I took a look at it, and very quickly, well, I'm not going to take too long in this. You can go online and look at your carbon footprint NWT calculator, and it'll tell you how you're doing. And we don't do too bad in the north because we really try to keep our energy use down by a lot of methods. But industrialized nations around the world, carbon dioxide, your carbon footprint is measured by tons of carbon dioxide that your lifestyle puts into the air. Industrialized nations are around 16 or a little bit better than 16 tons per individual. Unindustrialized nations, say like somebody that has no industry or nothing happening or just getting along in third world countries as they do, are less than 2 tons an individual. Now, ideally, in order to reverse what's happening with the climate change, the agencies responsible for this want to see all of us down to 2 tons of carbon dioxide per individual. That's a long way to go. Now, you think, oh well, we're an industrialized nation, we're 16, but I'm sorry to tell you, we're Canadians, and I thought we were doing pretty darn good, but as Canadians, we're one of the highest. We produce 20 tons per individual, which was way above the other industrialized nations and way, way more than what the third world countries are. So we have a heck of a long way to go. Now, I was kind of lucky because I got to tell all this to about 150 kids in the school over at Norman Wells, and I told them to go home and get all their parents to go on, bring this thing up and see how they're doing. So you can imagine what that might have, and to do it in their classroom also. If you're interested, if you go online and look for that calculator, it'll tell you your community. Norman Wells was in there. I can click my lifestyle, Norman Wells, how many times I travel on a jet, what I do for recreation, how I eat, how much wild food, how much rotten food, all these type of things. And it'll tell you how you're doing with your carbon footprint. And 10 chances to 1, for most people here in the north, we're going to be pretty good. Not as good as we can be, but pretty good. Because, like I say, of how we've made our infrastructure a lot more efficient just to relate to the climate that we have. So, anyhow, they're cutting me off. I've got some information. If anybody needs it, just leave contact with Jeremy there. We can get back. If anybody needs to know anything, we can get the information to you.
Okay, my name is France Benoit from Yellowknife. I'm here to tell you a little bit about myself as a food grower, but also more professionally as the chairperson of the Yellowknife Farmers Market. First, however, I'd like to thank people for mentioning my husband, Doug Ritchie, who passed away in January last night, and today he would very much have liked to be here. And I just wanted to mention that the NVT Environmental Stewardship Fund that was set up in his honor, and I brought little cards for people who may want to do donations. I'll put them on the table there, and funds will be distributed this fall. I do not come at all from a gardening tradition. My family, in fact, owned a small grocery store, and as far as I was concerned, for most of my life, this is where food came from. And in fact, I come from the generation that to be farmers was not was not a good thing, and we were so much better than those poor farming kids that were living in my small town. And so I have done a complete 180 in my life, which makes my family laugh hysterically. About 10 years ago, I started to grow food as something tangible that I could do to counter the environmental crises that we were facing. Climate change, food import substitution, better eating, connecting with nature and with friends. And basically, I just happened to buy a house that happened to have a garden, and friends came to help me. I educated myself with books and online resources, and I talked to many people in Yellowknife about gardening, but I felt that was ended up being a double-edged sword, because a lot of people bring their own gardening tradition when they move to Yellowknife. So I had people tell me, you can grow tomatoes in a garden in Yellowknife, and then I had more people telling me you can't grow tomatoes in the garden. So I had to come up with my own trial and error and come up with my own way of growing food. A big moment for me was in 2012 when I saw, Jackie mentioned that, the floods in Whitehorse and seeing bare shelves, grocery stores in Whitehorse, and I thought, wow, how food insecure are we up north? We have become food insecure up north. The final moment for me to go what I call go commercial was after watching a documentary. Fred and I do a lot of documentary watching about young farmers, young people deciding to go into farming and letting go of their engineering degree and whatever, and choosing to become gardeners without a farming tradition in their family. And after watching one of those documentaries, I thought, by then I figured I was probably the one that had the most growing food space in Yellowknife, and I thought, if I don't do it, who will? And it's just one of those things that you just bite the bullet and you wash away the tears and you go, I'm going to do this. And this is what we do best up north. We just wing it and we just do it. So I started to grow more and more food. I started to weigh everything that I was producing. So I would cut the broccoli head, and before I would eat it, I would weigh it just to give me an idea of how much food I was actually producing. And then I had this great spreadsheet, and I would go to the co-op and look at the equivalent in organic, the price of it, so I could get an idea of actually how much money or value I was producing. And that ended up being very helpful to me, because when I went to ITI to ask for money to build for more raised beds, I did not fit their criteria. As far as they were concerned, I was just a backyard gardener. But when I was able to present to them my 3-year charts showing how much food and how much more every year I was producing as I was learning, and the financial equivalent of what I was growing. And after appealing their decision, I was able to get $2,000 or $3,000, I forget. And as far as I'm concerned, that was the best money they ever spent. Because that allowed me to start selling at the farmer's market. Just to give you an idea of, I long for those fields in Norman Wells, but I live on a recreational lease lot outside the city limits on sheer bedrock. There's a cliff on my lease. I do container growing. I have rock gardens because I have an awful lot of rocks, raised beds on uneven ground. And what I mean by that is one end is 4 feet deep and the other end is 6 inches deep. I have to make my own soil because I have a bridge coming to the lot, and I can't have truckloads of soil coming. And I'm also worried about the arsenic content of soil here in Yellowknife. Because we live in the bush, we have started to fire smart our property. So we followed all the guidelines, and 30 feet after each building, we started to cut brush and cutting trees. And you can just imagine, as I'm standing there and I'm seeing this new land being available, when in fact I was doing the right thing by fire smarting the property. So this created more space for me to put in raised beds, most of them within my lot, but some outside of my lot. And recently I have been asked by the Department of Lands to remove those garden rows because they are outside of my lot. Needless to say, I have not done that yet and don't intend to. In 2013, Amy Lizotte and I, young woman in Yellowknife, anybody that's younger than me is she was doing a paper for a university and looked at the viability of having a farmer's market in Yellowknife, and it showed in the end that people were willing to pay a premium to be able to access locally harvested food. So we debated long and hard, Amy and I. Do we encourage more people to grow more produce and then we set up the farmer's market? Or do we just set up the farmer's market, pray, and start it, and then have that inspire people to grow more food? And that is the part that we decided to do. So this is the proverbial, if you build it, they will come. And they did come. There was just the two of us at the beginning, meeting weekly in the winter. By springtime, there was about 10 people that came to a meeting that were interested in helping with the farmers market. Many of these people I didn't know. By springtime, we had sort of a training session to see if there was interest in people vending at the farmers market, and 60 people showed up. It blew us away. It just convinced us that the local food revolution had reached Yellowknife. The first season in 2013, we had 11 vendors on the very first night, and we had champagne in the back of my car. It was a huge success, an outrageous success, but we had no idea if people who said they were going to come were actually going to come, and if people would be coming to attend the market, but they did. We adopted the formula of having the farmers market on City Hall grounds. We were adamant that we wanted this to be on public space, accessible to all Yellowknifers. Even though with the research that we did, they would tell us that parking is at a premium. You must have a lot of parking when you have a farmers market. And to have it on City Hall grounds meant that we wouldn't necessarily have a lot of parking, but that has never been an issue for us. And we adopted the formula of a weekday at 5:15 instead of a Saturday morning for a number of reasons. The anchor of the farmers market are food concessions, and we felt that there was more variety in offering a meal, an evening meal, in the evening instead of a Saturday morning farmers market, for example. We felt there was less variety if you're going to serve breakfast, for example, on a Saturday morning. We also felt that we got, 8 to 10 weekends in the summer. We didn't really want to be tied down to the farmers market. And there are garage sales on Saturday morning. And so what we decided to do is to do it on a weekday. It starts June 2nd this year. Runs for 16 weeks until September 15th. And it starts sharply at 5:15 with a big bell ringing. And the reason is there's no sales just before 5:15. So at 5:15, when the bells ring, selling can begin. The 2014 season, there was, you remember, forest fires, road closures, and that was another big moment for me, because the bare shelves that I saw in pictures, Whitehorse, were now in my hometown. And we doubled the number of vendors last season, but road closures, as Jackie told you, kept Jackie from coming to Yellowknife. It was a win for Hay River, but a loss for us. And also some of our vendors couldn't vend for health issues themselves. They didn't feel very good. And some of our vendors, including myself, couldn't get all the supplies they needed to be able to produce enough stuff to come to the market. It was not a huge issue. What it meant for me, for example, I make cheese from pasteurized milk, which I sell at the market. And I would go, sometimes I would have to go to 3 stores to find enough milk to be able to make the cheese. And then I felt bad, and I thought, oh, am I keeping children from from drinking milk? But it did work out in the end. As I said, we doubled the number of vendors in 2014. We averaged sort of 35 to 45. And we have vendor fees, which help us cover some of our expenses. So a full season is $250, half season $175, and if you come 4 times, it's $100. With that, we cover the cost of renting from the city and our insurance. You can imagine the liability. And as well, we hire a market manager. We are run entirely on volunteer basis, and you can just imagine the madness of running for 16 weeks a farmer's market. The very good news is we have reached almost $1 million in economic impact in the city of Yellowknife. And how we calculate that is at the end of each market, our market manager goes around and gives a little piece of paper to all of the vendors, and they write on that their gross revenue for that evening. It's anonymous. It's not that we're telling revenue agency about it. It's just that we want to get an idea of how much money was transaction was done. And with that, we've come to the conclusion that we average about $17,000 in sales every week at the market. So some weeks are better than others. If you multiply that by 16 weeks, if you multiply that by 3.24, which is the economic multiplier that the Ontario Farmers Market Association uses, and that means that for every dollar that is spent at the market, it circulates 3.24 times in the community. So I go to the co-op, I buy milk, I make cheese, I sell the cheese, I make money, and I go and buy things in my community, and these people make money, and then they come and buy at the farmers market. So very close to $1 million. In fact, I think we did reach it. We have also a Christmas farmers market, which is very successful, but we were running crazy, and we didn't even think of asking all the vendors this year for their revenue. We act as a business incubator as well. So we have some vendors, for example, that come for half a season, then the year after come back for full season. It's a great way for people to that have an idea to develop a product, to learn about pricing and packaging and marketing themselves, empowering themselves to feed their families and so on, and to get a supplement on their income. We also have a vendor, for example, who's been coming for 2 years with a food concession, and this year will return to the market, but they've also bought a food truck and will be selling on the streets of Yellowknife. We have a land share program, which is about sharing land, you can imagine. So what we do is, in trying to increase the number of produce vendors at the market, we try to connect people that have a little greenhouse they're not using, a plot of land they're not using, a few raised beds they're not using, and to connect people who want to grow food. And we've been lucky to be able to give some of these people a bit of money to buy soil, irrigation system, and so on. And when we give them money, we require that they come and sell the produce at the market. We are also under an agreement or a contract with the city, and they've been very good to us. They're giving us 5 years to pay the full rent. So the first year they only charged us 20% of the rent, the second year 40%, and so on. So giving us 5 years to build up a clientele. They've also only required us to operate under one business license. So if you come and vend at the market, you become a member and you operate under the Yellowknife Farmers Market business license. Otherwise, it meant that every vendor there would have had to buy a business city license. We are also under a pilot project, a special arrangement with Health and Social Services, the Environmental Health Division. You can imagine the food safety issues. Eventually, the department, and I think it's at the ledge at this point, or soon to be, where it would be the law that you could operate a home-based business using a home kitchen and sell at any venue. So we are, for the 3rd year, a pilot project for them. We are followed very carefully. The inspectors come on a regular basis at the market. And they also have, we provide them with a list of our approved vendors, and they contact every vendor to make sure that everybody is following food safety guidelines and so on. And again, coming at the market. And in my case, for example, nobody was doing cheese making, and he was not very familiar with that, so came and watched me make cheese for a day. Just, so that we're all operating with safe guidelines. And food concessions are our anchor, but we also have crafts and produce and eggs and baked goods and so on. There's a huge community dimension to the farmers market, and I'll briefly talk about that. So we have 3 tables that are open to the community. So if you are a community organization, you want to do some education or some fundraising for your organization, we provide 2 tables a week to those organizations, and they can come and spread their good news. Regarding produce, we have 2 specific tables. So one of them is you have an excess of lettuce at home in July and you don't know what to do with it, so you wash it and you bag it and you can bring it to the market and we will sell it for you. We'll have a table ready and we'll keep the revenue. So we'll make the $5 from your lettuce. But that is a way of not having that produce go to waste, and then it can be shared within the community. If you're operating on a little larger, not necessarily larger scale, but let's say that you, again, have excess produce, but you're interested in learning how to sell and how to market yourself and pricing and packaging and so on. So you can bring it to the budding gardener table. We provide the table as well. And you bring your stuff and you sell it yourself. And all we ask is 10% of your revenues. And that is to give you a foot in the door, and you can learn the ropes and then decide for yourself if you want to come and become a permanent or half-season or quarter-season vendor. We also act in a social dimension, if I can put it that way. To give you an example, last year a Chinese family got in touch with us. They were sponsoring their in-laws to move to Yellowknife, and they approached us and they said, we feel that to better integrate our in-laws into the community, would it be possible for them to sell food at the market so they get a sense of what the community is? And I thought, oh my God, now we are helping the social integration of recent immigrants to Canada. So to me, that was just a beautiful moment. They indeed sold at the market, and it was very successful, and they're coming back this year. There are kids' activities taking place that the city is coordinating. And this year, the Farmers Market, we got a grant from the Arts Council, and we will be providing music at the market. 5 weeks, we think we can squeeze the money and to have a 6th week as well. So during the market, there will be some local talent. We have, I think I mentioned this, stabilized to 35 to 45 vendors every week. We average 200 to 400 people coming to the market every week, some nights more than others. We were originally set up as a cooperative. We liked that model, that approach. However, it meant that we could not get a community grant from the city of Yellowknife because they don't give those to cooperatives. And it meant also that we could not fundraise like doing a raffle, for example. So we said, fine. And we became a registered not-for-profit organization under the Societies Act, and we're known as the Yellowknife Farmers Market. We have 3 goals and objectives. You can imagine the first one is to operate the farmers market. But we feel that as integral to our core business are the 2 other goals, which is to support food-based economic development, meaning that we want to support the economic development of businesses that are related to food, and we want to develop a local food system in Yellowknife. And now that the market operations are more stable, we want to start spending more time and concentrating on the 2 other aspects of being economic development of food-based businesses and to help develop a local food system. And we sort of call that food security. And so we decided last fall to take the first steps towards working towards food security in Yellowknife. So we got a group of people together. We wanted to brainstorm. We didn't specifically want organizations as such on the table, but people that were knowledgeable and connected and had their hands in a bunch of other things. And we developed a Yellowknife food charter. And I brought copies, and they're on the table there. It didn't come out of thin air. We largely based it on the Manitoba food charter model. And one of the reasons is we felt it really reflected the situation in the Northwest Territories because it talks about Indigenous rights, fishing and hunting and so on. So we felt that was a good fit. And so we developed this charter. It is in its draft form now, and I'd like just to read to you the vision of it. And I think that we can all hang our hats on this. A just and sustainable food system in Yellowknife is rooted in a healthy community where everyone has access to adequate and affordable nutritious food, more food is grown and harvested locally, and food production policies and infrastructure are in place to support an economically viable, diverse, and ecologically sustainable local food system. So this is the vision of the Yellowknife Food Charter. We were lucky to get funding from 4 different sources: the City of Yellowknife, the Anti-Poverty Fund, MACA, and the Arctic Institute of Community-Based Research in the Yukon, because they are interested in following the process that we have done, and they want to start doing that in the Yukon as well. And it goes back to what Jackie was talking about, sharing within the circumpolar region. So now what we are doing is we have hired somebody to start going to knock on doors, and we're first going to the City of Yellowknife to seek businesses, governments, organizations, individuals to sign on to the charter, saying, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, and I'm willing to start working on this. And we want to make food security an election issue at all levels, so territorial, federal, and municipal this fall. And we want, but because of the elections, we feel that this fall is almost like a write-off. So we want to get these people together in January 16. And so all the people who will have signed on, who are thinking of signing on, to get them together in January 16 so that we can start developing an action plan. And I think that at that point, the farmers market would sort of take a step back and go back to its main core business, which is to help food-based, and that's it. I just wanted to invite people to come to the market. It is an absolutely beautiful community site to see hundreds and hundreds of people on green lawn, kids running, great food. And I want everybody to remember in Yellowknife to remember that there was a time when that spot was earmarked for a building, and there was consideration to I think it was the courthouse that they were looking at. So just think that I remember Ecology North at that point fighting to keep that space, public space, and thank God. Thanks, France. Good. We have questions coming in online. We have a school online, I believe. So we want to be able to pick up those questions. We're running behind schedule, so we're going to need to kind of pick up the pace here, and I know everybody needs a short break. So maybe that's what we should do first, is have a 5-minute nature break and then get to these questions. Because you have questions of these 3 people and Jackie. And we also need to engage our folks online. So 5 minutes, bathroom break through the back doors there. Yeah, very quick, very quick. We're way behind. I know.
We charge as much as we can.
I know, there's so much to say.
So you don't have to log username and password still.
We gotta make up time here. Always the problem of starting late.
But lots of people have
So Virgin,
How was the New Zealand?
We lost our 15 minutes.
so yeah, you log in.
How big is your ear now?
Yeah, it's like oh yeah, well, I mean, it's just like I know. So yeah, you can say online. Oh no, I just want to be else.
Yeah, so I said maybe here.
Oh, okay, see, I didn't see it.
Like running.
Oh, I thought that you got like like typed it out. Okay.
Yeah, it was really right.
but okay, this Jessica's going to be taking care of it. She's just localized economy. This laptop here is just running the projector. So
Do you want to use one of the 57s, please?
It might not happen. I just thought I'd let it know.
Yeah.
I'm not going to participate anymore after this.
Okay.
You want to use the 57? Any other one? Yeah, the biggest complaints. Attach it to This is going to like pick up
I'm going to switch this to the control room phones.
Yeah. They're going to be. Yeah. I've got a whole bunch
It's not as good as the 57s quality wise, but it's
Yeah.
Yeah, the Ontario Farmers.
I can get it from you later.
Yeah. It's in our final report. That's yeah.
It's like every item of technology I have on me is using the
I know. Why is it not, right? Yeah, no, it's one of the things that not really related to them, but there's we have the old forest fires. Resources being allocated to push picking now, but there's something about resources for educating people. I thought, why are we doing that? Agriculture doing it. Well, let's see.
Wait. I'm not ready. Jeremy, can you turn up the volume on the box? Slash the volume on that?
Without a place to rent, because that was no budget. I know.
Okay, try one of the other mics. It's coming in. It's not coming out. Keep going. Testing.
One man said, and I was told, I'll pick this. And I shredded it. It's just that there has to be partly education
Oh, yeah, it's probably
Try them. I know.
If I could ask Rose and Matt and Jackie and Doug to come back, and we have a couple of questions. That have come online, and then we'll be taking some questions from the floor, and then we're going to be moving into the second panel. Hello, we're getting started again. Jackie, come on down. Fred, come on down. Doug, that'll be you too. We got questions for you. Yeah. So we have a couple of questions that have come in online. Could I ask, I think Craig Scott from Ecology North is keyed into the technology here, and he's going to pass these questions on for our panel to respond to.